are there. Thanks.
Well, as people are coming on, let's begin our introduction of Annie Guest. We are so grateful to have Anne with us tonight to do the second part of Design for Your Mind. And it's particularly poignant that we are doing this during Caregiver Month, because so many of us have been there and will be there again in the future. And it is a miraculous book that combines mental health, caregiving, and design in one. So we are asking that if you have a question and it's pertaining to what Anne is talking about now, please raise your hand and we'll try to incorporate it into the pertinent part of the discussion. Otherwise, we ask that you put your questions in the chat, and Casey and I will manage the chat and make sure that your questions are answered. So with that, I will turn it over to Annie Guest.
Thank you, Christine, and thank you, Casey. It's an honor to be here. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, as Christine said, my name is Annie Guest, and a few months ago, I published a book called Design for Your Mind: How a Family Caregiver and Mental Health Therapist Renovated Her Home to Recharge Her Life and Didn't Break the Bank. The origin of the book was that I'd been taking care of my mom and dad, eventually with professional assistance, final years. Dad had Parkinson's, and my mom eventually developed dementia. Prior to the dementia, she had been struggling with her mobility because of spinal stenosis. And I'm the oldest child and a daughter, and I lived in the house next door. So a lot of this responsibility fell to me. I was privileged to be in this position and to help make their final years good ones. But when it was all over, and my sister and I, as co-executors, spent well over a year cleaning out the house, I was a little burnt out, and I wanted to find my spark again. So eventually, I realized that if I used what I understood as a mental health therapist and used my lifelong passion for interior design, I might be able to renovate the house that I inherited from my parents in ways that would help me recharge, help to kind of accelerate the recovery. And I set about doing that. Midway through that process, it occurred to me that, having taken all kinds of before and after pictures and notes and created boards on Pinterest as I assembled ideas, that if I collected all these ideas and put them in a book, I might be able to help other people in the same position save some time in their own lives. So that's what I did. Which brings us to our talk tonight. Do you know that November is National Caregivers Month? This is the month to honor family caregivers. There are some 63 million family and friend caregivers, unpaid, working now in the United States. That is a huge cohort. This is the month to take stock of all we do to help our loved ones live a good life, but it's also a time to focus on caring for ourselves as we manage our responsibilities. Tonight, we'll talk first about how we can make caregiving a more harmonious experience for our loved ones and for ourselves. But then we will move on to something critically important. It's something we may not spend much time thinking about, and we'll talk about how we take care of ourselves, to figure out what's working in our self-care routine, if we can even call it a routine, and what needs fixing. In fact, this is the month that's a good time to make our well-being a priority if we've forgotten how to do that or have never done that before. So let's move on. As I took care of my own parents, a big lesson for me was learning that I could experience sadness and joy at the same time. That's a hard lesson. Once I realized that the two feelings could coexist in the same moment, and once I accepted the reality of what was, I figured out that I could find new ways to have fun with mom and dad. So we made new memories, we created new rituals, and as you know all too well, both Parkinson's and dementia are progressive conditions. They both keep coming back for more. They take more and more from your loved one. So for me, the question became, what is the reality today? What adjustments do we need to make so that mom and dad can still live their lives with joy and fun and dignity? In my book, I talk about how I would drive my parents to our local takeout sandwich place, and I'd leave them in the car. They'd give me their orders. I'd go in and fetch their orders, and we'd sit in the car and eat dinner and listen to the trains. That was our ritual. Then, because Parkinson's keeps coming back for more, when dad moved to a feeding tube, that was the new reality. We moved our dinners to the big bed, and mom and I ate pizza and we'd chat, the three of us. And then eventually Parkinson's took dad's voice. And our ritual moved to talking to him, all the siblings as they came to visit, and telling him about our day. And even with his faint voice, dad would still find a way to give us advice, which was a good lesson for me that I would suggest that we all think about. Your parents or your spouse or your sibling still want to fulfill whatever role they had in the family. And it was important to me not to infantilize my parents, never to talk baby talk to them or talk down to them, and never to assume incapacity. Never assume that they couldn't do something without learning that they couldn't do something. Always treat with respect, and I found that it minimized my parents' loss and my loss because they were my parents, and I still wanted them to be my parents. Another thing that I finally realized was to be patient. I mean, which we figure out, but that a certain kind of patience was called for. Both my mom and my dad needed more time to process what was being said to them or what they wanted to say, and it took longer for them to respond and express themselves. So the point was not to interrupt them and finish their sentences, but to sit back and listen and be patient. When I would ask them for clarification, it was helpful to say, what bothers you? What bothers you most? And then step back and listen to the answer. The one reason it's important not to assume either incapacity or lack of comprehension is that with Parkinson's, at least, tends to be a flat affect, as I'm sure you know. So you're not seeing the facial expressions you are accustomed to seeing with your loved one. And it becomes more difficult to read the PD loved one's face. Don't presume to read your loved one's mind because that person is not exhibiting the facial expressions that you're accustomed to seeing. Do we have
And I
any
have a
thought?
question.
Yes.
How did you recognize the joy and laughter in your dad when he couldn't express it? What other means did he use to let you know that inside he was laughing?
His sense of humor. His sense of humor. Um, he had a very understated, dry sense of humor, and as difficult as it was for him to speak, you could still hear him making little jokes. He also, even if it was a tiny little smile, you could see it. I mean, with all the effort. Um, but you also know somebody so well, you can just feel it when somebody's happy or sad or amused. Um, my parents were also very appreciative and they found every way they could to say thank you. So I didn't have to guess that.
Annie, we have a question from Sarah. Do you have any advice on dealing with guilt during the caregiving process and burnout? Because it can be very demanding, as you're aware of. And just she's curious of your thoughts on those.
Sarah, thank you for your question. It's excellent. We're going to be moving next to ways that we can take care of ourselves. I think we're going to be able to address the guilt question. It's a very subtle, that's a very subtle issue. Um, because the guilt can come from various things. It can come from being impatient, feeling impatient. It can come from having lost one's temper or being irritable. It can come, in my case, it really was linked to the burnout I was experiencing because I didn't recognize that I was burning out. And when there would be another medical emergency and I didn't have what I considered to be an appropriate emotional response to it, I thought, what kind of daughter am I? Don't I love my parents? Because all I feel is numb. What's wrong? What's wrong with me? But we are going to be turning now to how we take care of ourselves, and the benefit of taking care of ourselves is that we can minimize the burnout. And I think some of that guilt that likes to attach itself to burnout. Does that answer your question, Sarah?
Yes, she typed in thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Now, let's talk about taking care of ourselves. It's National Caregivers Month after all. As we think about how well we're taking care of ourselves, we can focus on four big needs that we all have. These four are by no means our only needs, but each one is essential to maintaining our physical and mental health now and over our lifetime. And those needs are, in no particular order, an enriched environment. That includes social support. And we're going to be talking, and please speak up about this, talking about the importance of building community, something that we may not be thinking about right now when we're so focused on our loved one. But these are also years that it's important to build and maintain our relationships with other people. Next is regular aerobic exercise, which keeps our brains and our bodies healthy, good nutrition, and ample sleep. If we go without attending to any one of these needs, we will see the effects on our physical and mental health. It makes us far more prone to burnout. But attending to each of these needs is even more critical when we're under stress. And we all know this. Whether the stress comes from caring for a loved one or any other big life challenge. Ironically, and unfortunately, when we're under stress, we tend to let these basic self-care responsibilities slip off our list of priorities. That's the paradox. We should be paying far more attention to ourselves when we're under stress, but that is just the time when we tend to think our self-care responsibilities are expendable, or we'll take care of them later. We'll catch up on our sleep on some magical Saturday. But we pay a price for that. The price might be foggy thinking, difficulty focusing, low energy, depression, weight gain, irritability, poor impulse control, and burnout. One way we can make sure to attend to these needs, however big we are with our responsibilities, is to design our living spaces to make it easier to meet those needs. Another way is to build daily habits. I'd love to hear your suggestions for them. For example, getting up really early when you can do this, to grab a cup of coffee and then out the door to take a 10-minute walk. And if you need to leave, the way I do it is I've got my boots and my coat and my hat right by the door. And before I can put my brain in gear in the early morning and think of an excuse not to do it or to do something else, I'm out the door. But the benefit of doing that over and over and over is that I've built a habit. So I don't think about it anymore. That's the way I start the day. Or we might build the habit of getting up early to work out on our exercise bike. Another way to meet these needs is to take the opportunity to stack activities so that we can meet more than one need at a time. For example, taking a walk while listening to an audiobook. Inviting a friend to walk with you. That's your social support and your exercise. Inviting a friend over to make a meal together. That's your social support and your good nutrition. Taking a bath while you listen to an audiobook on Spotify. That's relaxing, encouraging ample sleep and intellectual stimulation. Can you have any? Yes. Casey.
Yes, Jennifer mentioned that when her husband goes to a Parkinson's exercise class, she goes to another part of the gym where they offer the class and she does her own workout.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. That is creative. I mean, because one of the sad realities of caregiving is that we're working with finite time, finite energy, which can expand if we're smart. And any opportunity we have to meet, to make the time more productive, helps us.
Casey has another one.
One other, Joe had mentioned that his spouse doesn't want him to leave her at any time. So any tips on how to manage your loved one when they don't want you to leave them, even for a few minutes?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sorry. That hit hard because I know that very well. I mean, all of this is so love academic, and until we talk about the fact that these are real people with who are losing so much in their lives and really feel an urgency to maintain control over what is left. I'm regarding exercise for Joe, if he can get an exercise bike and they don't have to be expensive, or some other weights, some other mechanisms in his house so that he can be exercising with his wife sleeping 5 minutes or in the next room or 5 feet away. He can take care of his responsibilities to himself without leaving her. But my question also for Joe would be, is there anybody else who his wife would be comfortable being with so that he can take 10 minutes to go out and take a walk? Because the dependency can be a habit. The dependency on a specific person can be a habit. Necessarily it's not necessarily impossible to work with. Yes, Casey.
Joe had commented that it's helpful to think about even finding a few minutes if there's he's thinking about some of his family members and even a neighbor that could stop by and help for just a little bit.
Yep. 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 And but I try to be sensitive to what can drive the dependency of Joe or my parents on, or anybody on one and what that might be about. In It might be shame, it might be that they don't, I'm speaking from experience, that they don't want outsiders to see their particular condition, which can be, has some humiliating aspects. It might be not being able to tie your shoes. It might be your chin on your chest and drooling. And it so it becomes difficult to allow somebody else into the house to see that. But if I were Joe, I would explore the possibility of his wife's comfort with people, say other family members, who could fill in for a few minutes.
Just today, I read about someone who would play old family movies for their loved one, and they could look at the past and see their family, and that gave them a few minutes.
I mean, it's really satisfying for both the loved ones and the caregiver to remember that that these sad days, which are not, unilaterally sad, but their current condition doesn't represent the entirety of their lives. Their lives are full, that they weren't always in this condition. And it helps with grief to remember that when you finally lose these loved ones. Now, as I mentioned, one of our non-negotiable needs is for an enriched environment, and this includes social support. This is the den that some of us saw in the previous sessions. You saw the before, this is the after. This is the den that I designed specifically so that I could feel comfortable, that I could entertain friends and be able to read a book and be able to concentrate. And in fact, when I finally had the idea to write this book, this is where I read it. But I've got ample seating so that friends can gather. I've got a couple of ottomans behind the sectional sofa, and I'm surrounded by books. And there are family heirlooms in this room that make me feel connected to my loved ones. And there's art, and there's ample natural light. You can see the west-facing window and the south-facing window. But this was a room that I specifically designed so that even when I spent hours alone in it, reading and writing, I didn't feel isolated. It was specifically for that purpose that I added all these things, because in order to do anything productive, I needed to sustain my concentration, my focus, and wouldn't have been able to do that if I were feeling edgy, or overstimulated or understimulated. Now, may I suggest that we ask ourselves this month, are you doing enough? Are we doing enough to build and maintain a network of friends who can provide us with the social support we need now and will need in the future, and to whom we can give that support ourselves? We don't have to answer that now, unless anybody wants to comment. But that is a question to hold in our minds. There are solutions to this that we can discuss as we go on. If the answer is no, easy solutions include getting on the website for a local library and looking for book clubs, whether the meetings are held by Zoom, in person, or some of them online, email. So you don't even have to, you can do it in the middle of the night and participate in the book club. Technology today is making it easier to engage with other people, even if we have little control over our time. That is one of the gifts of this technology. So take advantage of that if you can. Another offering by my local library is a walking group in the local community, but that's just a bonus. But the library can be a central site for, or a repository of social opportunities, including walking and book club and writing, that you might not have thought of. And it's those, you can sign up for all of these activities through your library's website. But beyond that, consider setting up a regular play date with a friend, say for walks or for lunch or to see a movie. And to Joe's point, it might be very difficult to plan. It certainly was for me, because you never knew when the next emergency would arise. So it was useful to keep these play dates infrequent and flexible if possible. But to go back to the way these various book clubs are offered at my local library, there are 4 of them. One particular book club invites you to show up in person or by Zoom, your choice, on at any particular week. So if an emergency arises and you weren't able to leave the house, but you got an hour, you can join the book club. Look online for local meetup groups that bring people together who share your interests, whether it's pickleball or Mai Tai or whatever. Um, um, and look into groups of people who enjoy the same hobbies and volunteer opportunities. And finally, look for a church if you don't have one, or any kind of group that of people who share your spiritual needs and experience. Are you finding time to read books? If not, consider reading an audiobook. Simply, if you've got Spotify or you've got, Kindle, or I mean, not Kindle, but take advantage of the opportunity simply to listen to a book on your phone as you take a walk or wash the dishes. Now, finally, Christine, you've brought this up before, and I will raise it on your behalf. A word about clutter. It can be difficult to feel the benefits of any improvements you make to the design of your house if you're wading through clutter and you're just bombarded by visual chaos every time you walk into the room. The reason clutter impairs our ability to focus is that in a cluttered environment, every object is competing for our attention, and our poor brain is just reeling. I mean, you can't focus on one thing because several other things are battering at it. You will get the therapeutic benefits of decluttering as soon as you start decluttering. You don't have to finish the job to feel the calm. Studies are showing just get started, and long before you finish the job, you're going to feel the effect on your anxiety level.
And, one other suggestion I would add is that we all need to start to recognize what future generations may want. And it was a hard lesson for my mother to understand that some of the things that were precious to her weren't wanted by her children, and frankly, weren't wanted by an estate sale community. Um, Times have changed. So that's another thing that I think we have to emotionally distance ourselves from things.
But it doesn't mean that an audience thrift shop wouldn't be interested. I mean,
Right,
there's a difference between buying something in a estate sale and buying something at a thrift shop,
right.
or picking up something in a voucher program for free. So there may be a taker for most of the things that your mom wanted someone to appreciate, and she might have been spared some of the hurt feelings, because I mean, we hear about this. a lot. Parents trying to give their kids objects that their kids consider clutter, and their kids want everything new. Someone will take most of these things.
Right. Nothing went to waste, but
Good.
often we didn't let her know that things were being removed from the house. And she didn't miss them if she didn't know.
The curtains that these curtains replaced, the curtains that were in the house when I moved into it, were the curtains that were in the house when my parents bought the house in the late 90s, and they had holes in them. No one would have bought them at an estate sale or paid any money for them, but I gave them to a mechanic who puts them under vehicles as he works underneath them. So they found a good home. Another one of our needs is for regular aerobic exercise. Keep moving. As I mentioned, grab a walk. If you can do it first thing in the morning before you have a chance to think of excuses, get out the door. Make it so easy for yourself. You don't even have to turn your brain on. Your boots and your coat and your hat and your gloves are right there at the door. I'm talking seasonally. But at other times in the day, if you've got 10 minutes, and I know it can be difficult with our responsibilities, if you've got 10 minutes, get out the door, take another walk, get the fresh air, get the sunshine, or hop on your exercise bike if you can't leave the house. But those minutes will add up. It's according to people who study aging, they say regular aerobic exercise is our best defense against age-related cognitive decline. Regular aerobic exercise. It pumps oxygen to the brain and helps stimulate the growth of new blood vessels, and can even stimulate the brain to produce new cells through a process called neurogenesis. And that leads to an overall improvement in brain performance and helps prevent cognitive decline. This is important. 10 minutes on that exercise bike is your investment in your future. If that's all you have, do it. But there's more, because regular exercise can relieve mild depression. And one reason for that is that it stimulates nerve cell growth in a part of the brain called the hippocampus that regulates emotions. The hippocampus is also the part of the brain associated with memory and learning. So regular exercise helps build cognitive strength as it relieves depression. So ideally, you find a room with natural light and you for exercise and reading this winter. And by the way, our sleep and our wake cycles, if we're now halfway through November, we may find ourselves getting a little groggier a little earlier in the day, but that is because our sleep and our wake cycles are tied to natural light. And that's why we get drowsy when days are short. If we can spend more time in a room with natural light, we can help to adjust our grogginess to what we consider a normal length of day. Any questions? Yes,
Annie,
Casey.
Gloria mentioned that there was a time not long ago when the whole world was painted gray, because that's what the designers recommended. And do we have enough barn doors already? Benjamin Moore and Sherwin Williams advertise their colors of the year. How does one refrain from getting caught up in trends and fads?
Uh, as I mentioned to Christine and you earlier, two words that you will never hear fall from my lips without a pejorative comment is on trend. Design should serve you and your needs and the needs of the people you love. It's about you. Those choices have to emanate from you, not some person or committee that got together to decide what everybody should be chasing after. On the subject of color, during those dark days that we're starting to experience now, there's going to be a tendency to feel confined because we are going to be spending more time in the house. And the way the brain perceives color can influence our choice as to what color to paint a room. A light color registers on the brain with a little more delayed action, with the effect that the result that a light colored wall seems to be moving away from the eye. Therefore, four light colored walls make a room look bigger because the walls seem to be moving away. The opposite occurs with a dark colored wall. And so if the on-trend shade is a dark color, and one runs out and paints one's room with that dark color and winter comes, one might feel that room closing in. Another reason to let these decisions emanate from you and your needs is that a light color also reflects light, and a dark color, as we all know, absorbs light. So that when the days get shorter and there's a premium on natural light, you really might not want to have your walls soaking up what natural light is available. Does that answer the question?
Gloria says, yes, it does. Thank you.
And
Thank you,
I
Laura.
agree with Laura. Like the first barn door that I saw, I thought was so cute. And then when I saw them in every redesign, that was it. And I think, yeah, you have to time your changes.
Yeah. Yeah. Classic, you will never go wrong with classic. You will never go wrong with timeless. I mean, if you can sever what you choose from time itself, it will never look old. You'll never be tired of it. I mean, optimally, it would be something that looks as if it could have been made last week or thousands of years ago. I mean, that is classic. No. We all need good nutrition. We can ask ourselves, are you eating well? This is kind of a thorny issue if you're a caregiver, if you're short on sleep, if you're short on exercise, if you're under stress. The tendency can be to numb your feelings. You haven't been spending enough time with your friends. You haven't been spending enough time relaxing. And you're looking for comfort. And there it is. So, and comfort food tends to be high in carbs. But you might be overeating in the hope of boosting your energy level because you're not sleeping well or exercising consistently enough to maintain your energy. So, and it's an ongoing battle. There's nothing magical about it, but there are ways to make it easier to make a healthy choice. Just, I mean, a little thing that I do, and I'm always fighting this battle. I've got a Vidalia chop wizard. Do you know what that is? I mean, the most low-tech little gadget you ever saw. It costs about $10. And I use it to chop up onions or peppers or mushrooms. And then I can keep them in glass jars in my refrigerator. And that makes it easy if I'm making that choice between something nutritious and which involves cooking and something quick, which might be not nutritious. I know that I don't have the excuse that I don't have the time to chop up an onion. Planning ahead and making sure that you have food in your kitchen that enables, but so is planning for cravings. And I haven't quite figured that out. But because I always seem to be caught short when I'm having a craving. But if you can anticipate when you're going to start craving and what you can do to feed that particular crave, that can be useful, whether it's grapes or something else, that can be useful. But first, don't beat yourself up if you're not eating well when you haven't examined whether you're sleeping well and getting enough exercise and getting enough social support and intellectual and artistic stimulation, because they're all feeding the cravings. Now, sleep, as we mentioned. How are you sleeping? It's tough to get sleep when your loved one is struggling with insomnia, which is an unfortunate feature of PD. But that aside, how is your mattress? Mattress shopping nowadays, thanks to technology, is much easier than it used to be. We might envision just going from store to store, which we don't have time to do, and certainly not in the company of our loved one with PD, and flopping down on various store samples. I mean, who has time for that? You don't have to do that anymore. You can read mattress reviews online, professional mattress reviews, say in the New York Times Wirecutter or any other place. There, you'll read professional reviews. Then if you want to explore any of their suggestions, go online and read consumer reviews. But here, this bed has a mattress called, I'm going to plug here with absolutely no affiliate interest. This is called a Lisa Sapira Hybrid Foam and Coil Mattress. I ordered it online. The website is leesa.com. The mattress was delivered to my door, rolled up in a box, and we took it into this room, took it out of its wrapping, and had a blast watching the thing grow into its full size over the course of about a day. And it is the best mattress I've ever slept on. And I first got one for my guest, for the guest rooms. and one night happened to sleep on it because I needed to, and fell in love with it, and realized that the 40-year-old mattress that I'd inherited in the big house was probably the reason I was getting only 4 or 5 hours of sleep a night. And so I got one from my own bed. So that's my mattress review. We are coming to the last 4 minutes of our hour. Do we have time to talk about communicating with our families?
Yes.
Here's a question you can ask yourself in November. Are you communicating your needs clearly with your siblings and children and other family members? Are they listening? One of the problems when we have people with illness or other challenging conditions is that the focus is on those people because they present the acute emergencies and the immediate needs, and your chronic condition, which might be burnout or lack of sleep or isolation, is not considered an emergency that warrants immediate focus, if it's even recognized. So you may be speaking up and they're not listening because mom just fell or dad just went to rehab after a fall. If they're not listening, if your family members are not listening, be explicit. Don't expect them to read your mind, and don't be angry with them because they're not reading your mind. They're not in your situation. If you're the primary family caregiver, they haven't walked the walk, even if they think they have. You may need to think of specific ways that they can help you and tell them what they are. For example, your siblings might help out by ordering groceries online, which anybody can do from any part of the country, or by attending your parents', I'm going to say parents here, but it could be a spouse, doctor's appointment, even. That's another way technology helps. Now, there is a nuclear option. If you can't get your siblings' attention or your children's attention, you may have to tell them you've planned a vacation. And then go ahead and plan it and go on it. But give them a time to catch their breath and make the accommodations they need to make.
Eye-opening, I'm sure.
We can ask ourselves some questions that we've answered throughout the presentation in one way or another, but this might be a time to just drive an issue. You're providing dedicated care to your parents or your spouse or your sibling or your child. Have you asked yourself who will provide that care to you when you need it yourself? We're living at a time of several cultural shifts, and each of them will have a direct impact on our well-being in our old age. First, more men and women than in past decades are unmarried and don't have children. And one of these people may be you. And in the boomer generation, this makes for some big numbers, all converging on old age at the same time. Seniors experience more medical needs, as we know, than the general population at a time when their income is stagnant or declining. For the first time in our lives, we may find ourselves financially vulnerable if an accident or serious illness strikes. And what's more, professional caregivers will be harder to come by when we reach old age because there's so many of us, and they'll be more expensive to hire. So rather than leave us all sad and depressed with this news, what can we do about it? What can we do to help ensure that we will have a good old age? And the answer is lots. We can do everything we can now to extend our health span. And that's the number of years that we spend free of significant illness or disease. In other words, let's keep up with the habits that will protect all aspects of our physical and mental health, including our brain health, because an extended health span will help reduce the number of years during which we're dependent on other people to care for us and manage our affairs. Everything we've talked about tonight helps to extend our health span. It's not just for today. These are investments in the rest of our lives. Second, if we want to age in place, that means in the home we have now, let's do everything we can now to set up systems that help us maintain our independence. They might be automatic bill payment with trusted vendors, technology again, keeping all information that pertains to our property, utilities, vehicles, and taxes in one central place. I keep my everything in one binder. Clear out clutter, here, Christine, clear out clutter now to reduce our risk of falls. Not only will we avoid potentially life-changing falls, but we'll leave less work for other people. And set up regular servicing of heating and cooling systems. Schedule someone to clean out our rain gutters twice a year. These are season-driven tasks that we may someday forget, and they have serious implications for the safety of ourselves and for the condition of our house. Another easy thing is to invest in a simple toxic gas detector that can be plugged into outlets near our gas-powered clothes dryer, water heaters, because the gas conduits in our house can degrade over time and might be prone to leaks. Invest in smoke detectors. If we inherit our parents' house and they had handrails in the house and a ramp, keep them. Even if you take them down and put them up later, a ramp at the side door will come in handy for moving furniture and other large items long before you need it for a wheelchair. But make a living will now. I don't know if any of you have had to deal with the very end of the life of your loved one, but in my mom's case, the living will that she made was a blessing to us kids, because they were her answers to questions that we had. And we could make decisions without guilt and with peace of mind. If you don't know what a living will is, it's a legal document that outlines your wishes for medical treatment if you're unable to communicate them yourself. And it becomes active only when you are alive, but in a state where you are unable to make your own healthcare decisions. As you recall, I said that my mom had dementia. This is what made the living will so precious. It's part of an advanced directive that can guide doctors on treatments like CPR, ventilators, and life support to make sure your wishes are honored and to relieve your loved ones of the burden of trying to guess your wishes. It's a very simple document. You could find a form online. Make a will. And this is a sad point, but I do want to point this out. If you have no spouse, if you have, don't risk dying intestate, as they say. You die, if you die without a will, the word is you died intestate. In most states, if you die without a valid will or estate plan, and you leave no spouse, children, or parents, your estate will pass to your next of kin under the laws of intestacy. If you have siblings, your next of kin would be your siblings. Do you want your entire estate after taxes to pass to your siblings? If not, even a simple, properly executed will that helps ensure that the laws of intestacy do not come into effect will ensure that your assets go where you want them to go. Do you have pets or livestock? What plans have you made for their care in the event that you die before they do? Talk with your attorney about establishing trust if such an instrument is recognized in the state where you live. Consider assigning medical power of attorney and power of attorney to people you trust. But build your network of friends and do the work now to maintain the friends you have now. People are redefining what it means to be a family, and friends sometimes become substitute family. Any questions?
I don't see any additional questions. Any last comments, Annie or Christine?
Yes, I would say there's so many changes that have altered the traditional reality that we perceived as representing old age. This calls on us to be creative, to take responsibility for ourselves and what we can do to ensure our best old age and our health, mental and physical health now. But also be creative in conceiving of new ways to enjoy a community and new ways to build the legacy that we would like to leave behind. And that is self-care.
Very, very well done, Anne. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for asking me. And excellent questions. I appreciate every single one of them. They were so insightful.
Well, we're going to have to figure out other ways to incorporate you into our community outside of the book, but inclusive of the book.
Yes.
Okay, well, if that's it, I will stop the recording and wish everyone a very good night, and know that we will be repeating session 1 and session 2 beginning next week.
Thanks, Christine. Thanks, Casey. Thanks, everybody. Thank you for
Thank you
joining
so
me.
much, Ann. It
Thank
was
you.
great. Bye.